Lola Dhawa Jebe Dra No Par Jebe Geng Tarpa Dan Tham Je Gempe Baridu Chopra Jeba Tham Jege Su Jebe Manang Kadang Nyampe Senjen Tham Je Dewa Dan Den Dunya Dan Nerdu Lana Me Pa Yang Dabra Sobe Janju Rinpo Je Tobra Jai Nala Dhawa Jebe Dra Nobar Jebe Gek Tarabada Tam Je Kebe Baridu Chopra Jeba Tam Je Gisu Jebe Manang Kadang Nyampe Senchen Tam Je Dewa Dan Den Dunya Dan Nerdu Lana Me Pa Yang Dabra Sobe Chanju Rinpo Je Dobra Jai Dala Dhawa Jebe Dra Nobar Jebe Ge Tarpa Dan Tham Je Kempe Baridu Chopra Jeba Tham Je Gisu Jebe Manang Kadang Nyampe Senchen Tham Je Dewa Dan Den Dunya Dan Nerdu Lana Me Pa Yang Dabra Zobe Chanchu Rinpo Je Tobar Jai De Je De Sama Geki Pardu Lunga Yesum Gewala Ko Mashi Pardu Lunga Yesum Gewala Ko Du Terine Sunte Nema Santa Samji Pardu Lunga Yesum Gewala Go Zanje Jodan Sogi Jonam La Chanchu Pardu Dani Gyabsu Je Dagi Jinsu Gibe Sonanke Drola Penchir Sanje Duprashu Sanje Jodan Sogi Jonam La Chanchu Pardu Dani Gyabsu Je Dagi Jinsu Gibe Sonanke Drola Penchir Sanje Duprashu Sanje Jodan Sogi Jonam La Chanchu Pardu Dani Gyabsu Je Dagi Jinsu Gibe Sonanke Drola Penchir Sanje Duprashu Kadang Nyampe Senchen Tam Je Dewa Dan Dewe Gyundan Dempra Gyurje Dunyao Dang Dunyao Gi Gyudan Dewa Gyurje Dunyao Mebe Dewa Dang Me Dewa Gyurje Nirin Chadang Nidan Dewe Dang Nyam La Nebra Gyurje Manang Kadang Nyampe Senchen Tam Je Dewa Dan Dewe Gyundan Dempra Gyurje Dunyao Dang Dunyao Gi Gyudang Dewa Gyurje Dunyao Mepe Dewa Dang Me Dewa Gyurje Nirin Chadang Nidang Dewe Dang Nyam La Nebra Gyurje Manang Kadang Nyampe Senchen Tam Je Dewa Dan Dewe Gyundan Dempra Gyurje Dunyao Dang Dunyao Gi Gyudang Dewa Gyurje Dunyao Mepe Dewa Dang Me Dewa Gyurje Nirin Chadang Nidang Dewe Dang Nyam La Nebra Gyurje In all the worlds of the 10 directions reside Tathagatas of the 3 times. Before each of you lions among humans, I prostrate joyfully with body, speech, and mind. By the power of this aspiration to noble deeds, all conquerors appear vividly in my mind, with as many bodies as there are atoms in all, and I prostrate to all you conquerors. In each atom are Buddhas numberless as atoms, all in the midst of the heirs of the Buddhas. Thus I conceive of this Dharma Dhatu as completely filled with you, conquerors in this way. With infinite oceans of praise and oceans of diverse melodies, I sing the excellent qualities of all you conquerors, and praise all of you gone to bliss. With the best flowers and best garlands, best music, ointments, and excellent parasols, finest lamps and superior incense, I offer to you, conquerors. With excellent garments and best fragrances and sandalwood powder, heap high as Mount Meru, all wondrous offerings perfectly arranged, I offer to you, conquerors. These vast and unequal offerings to each and every one of you conquerors, with the power of conviction in noble deeds, I prostrate and offer to all you conquerors. All the harmful deeds that I have done with my body, speech, and mind under the power of desire, hatred, and ignorance, I confess each and every one of them. I rejoice in all the meritorious deeds of all conquerors in the 10 directions and in the heirs of the Buddhas. Solitary realizers, hearers still in training and beyond, and all wandering beings. You who are lamps of the worlds of the 10 directions, who have unobstructedly attained Buddhahood through the stages of Bodhi. All you who are my protectors, please turn the unexcelled wheel of Dharma. With palms together, I earnestly beseech you who may intend to manifest final nirvana. Please remain for as many eons as there are atoms in the world, for the happiness and well-being of all wandering beings. Whatever slight virtue that may have been gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate to complete Bodhi. This ground sprinkled with scented waters and strewn with flowers, adorned with the supreme mountain for continent, sun, and moon, I hold in mind as a Buddha land and offer it. May all wandering beings experience such a pure land. To the Gurus who possess the 3 Kayas, I offer the outer, inner, secret, and thusness offerings. With my body, wealth, and all phenomenal existence, please grant the unsurpassed supreme Bodhi. Whatever slight virtue I may have gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate it all to complete Bodhi. Om Guru Deva Dhakinirana Mandala Pratija Swaha. Please turn the wheel of Dharma of the greater, lesser, and common vehicles in accordance with the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings. Dorje Janjan Tele Naroda Mamita Popa Doje Dengon Garden Sunten Savela Mesham Sajula Mayidam Jogyong La Soba Deswataki Jinjilo Kemdangi Dome Samlingan Rapeton Sunyong La Gatso Megawa Doje Chang Pa Jiten Kumpo Shabla Dutatu Samgyo Kyole Me Jinjilo Shitu Jejen Nengemo Besene Kansem Dode Duto Prajinjilo Jinju Jina Johnson Pema Gesa Tumpola Yasen Jogging Odum Yepe Majune Shuda Godo Gado Mampu Gora Geki Jezeda Tengijin Chila Jeshuza Guru Pema said Hong O Men Choking Yakin Podane to Sanje Kunjing O One Rasen Jogung on Sunton Zepe 作为了没少了做我的。Good morning to everyone. So again, we are now looking at chapter 9 of the Bodhichayavatara, the chapter that is on the subject of wisdom. So we use this word wisdom very frequently, right, in our Buddhist vocabulary. Wisdom is used very frequently, and sometimes we kind of, because we hear it so much, sometimes we like kind of forget, like what are we talking about when we say wisdom. So basically here we are talking about, you could say we're talking about understanding. Having the right understanding when we see things as they are, rather than merely seeing things as they appear to be. Yeah, so that's essentially, right, what we mean when we say wisdom, wisdom, wisdom. So this chapter on wisdom, basically, so in the traditional commentaries on this chapter, they say that you can see three parts, but very unequal parts to this chapter, which is first, Shantideva talks about the necessity of cultivating this wisdom, and that's basically verse number 1. Then from verse 2 to 150 is the explanation on how to cultivate this wisdom. Right? So 2 to 150. Then from 151 to the end of the chapter, which is stanza 167, 151 to 167 is said to be a concise explanation on how to realize this understanding, this wisdom, which is the wisdom or the understanding of emptiness. So the second section from stanza 2, verse 2 to 150, the primary mode of the primary approach or mode or technique that Shantideva uses to give a detailed explanation on how to cultivate this understanding. How to have a more and more detailed, profound, deep understanding of what this emptiness is, and what it is and what it is not. He does this primarily by the technique or the approach of refutation, which is to refute, to point out the mistakes of prevailing views and understanding on what is the true nature of things, what is the true nature of the person, what is the true nature of the mind. So these things that he's refuting is of course based on what his audience were familiar with, and what he knew his audience, different people in his audience, his fellow monks, how they each might hold these different views. So what he does then is he points out, he is leading us to an understanding, to a clear understanding of this emptiness by way of saying, it is not this, it is not this, it is not this, it is not this, it is not this. It is not like this, it is not like this, it is not like this, it is not like this. So by refuting, by negating. So in this section where he is doing all these refutations, as I have mentioned earlier, it is not as clean, it is not as obvious as one would expect, especially if you were expecting like a conventional like essay, right? As I said, as someone who has had some years of experience being a college professor, just very few years, but enough to say, if someone were to write an essay, like the way Shantideva presented chapter 9, I don't know, I'll give it a C minus maybe. Because the first thing I will say is, you are all over the place. You need to help your readers, follow your line of argument. But you see, my saying of that, is not to criticize Shantideva, but rather to criticize those of us who try to read Shantideva as if he was attempting to write a systematic refutation of the wrong views, and that he's making a progression of arguments from the most gross to the most subtle. So then attempts to interpret or to read this chapter that way would, of course, unnecessarily complicate things and make it really hard to understand what in the heck is he talking about. So I think it helps for us to then remember the extemporaneous quality of this deliverance, the on-the-spot quality of him delivering this. He didn't sit and think about and to compose, right? Whatever came to him when he looked out in his audience. As I said, you have to try to imagine, certain stanzas when he's saying it, maybe he's looking in one direction, and he sees, one group of monks that he knows, that they hold this idea, they are experts in this area, and so he prompts them, he kind of stir things up a little bit there. And then he looks over there and he sees another group that he knows because these are his friends, his colleagues, right? And he knows, you all think the reality is like this, based on your adherence to this or that philosophy. So he's looking across, and including Hindu, meaning these other Indian systems, because Nalanda was a very vibrant university that included Buddhists and non-Buddhists, even though it was a Buddhist university, but it was open to everyone. So all the greatest minds of India would be enrolled there. In fact, we have records from Chinese monks who traveled to India during that time that saw how rigorous Nalanda was. Even very learned people go there, they get humbled immediately. So there's that tradition of like, cutting you down immediately. If you are so proud and you think you're so smart, they will cut you down immediately and put you in your place. So Shantideva was in that kind of an environment where he just said a few things, and he continues on. Yeah. So what he's doing is that he's talking towards different people in the audience. And so once again, it's not easy for us to understand, to follow, because we don't know exactly who he's talking to. In fact, when you look at the Sanskrit that still exists, we have a Sanskrit. We have two versions of Sanskrit of the Bodhicharavatara. Actually, an earlier version is a lot shorter number of stanzas. A later version has more stanzas, right? But either way, when you look at even from the Sanskrit, forget about Sanskrit being translated into Tibetan and then Tibetan into English, which is how we have ours, and then the Spanish is further English to Spanish. But even in the Sanskrit, I was looking at some of these translations from Sanskrit, and the translators say, even in the Sanskrit, sometimes you are not sure. Like, wait, is Shantideva now talking about someone else's view, or is he talking about his view? Even that is not exactly very clear. Which, of course, is great. You're like, wait, what do you mean it's great? It's great for scholars, for those nerds. Because when it's vague, then you can debate, right? You can do more things with it. So nobody debates like a how-to book, of like how to set up your couch, like it's so clear, right? What is there to debate? And so you look at it one time, you throw it away. There's no more use, So in a way here, because, chapter 9, there are all these kind of debatable. And so it has also generated a lot of very creative energy around chapter 9. And if you like things like that, for sure, you can become an expert on chapter 9. And look at all the different ways. Like this person says that, oh, this view is like this. That person says, no, that view is like that. And then this person says, no. Actually, Shantideva is not talking about his own position. He's talking about someone else's position. And then somebody else will say, no. Actually, here he is talking about his own position, and he's making fun of the other person's position. So there's definitely a lot of very creative energy has been generated by how to interpret chapter 9. Now, of course, it could also be bad news, right? Then you're like, oh my gosh, like this is so hard to understand. Yes, yeah, of course. Yeah. But as I said, the way we're going to approach chapter 9 is, first of all, remember like the old man eating. So when we get a piece that is soft, then we take a long time and we chew on it and we chew on it and we chew on it to enjoy that soft piece of food that we got. Then when the next bite we find a hard piece, then we just should swallow it and move on, because we don't know exactly what is going on. Now, this method of, you could say, refutation, that's a debate term. You refute, you kind of show how what is being said is mistaken, is wrong. Now, of course, like Shantideva's context, it's a very vibrant debate tradition among the learned people of India. In part also, like the Indian emperors and kings, they also like to hold these debate tournaments between different religions, and then within a particular religion, between different views held by adherents of one religion. So they like to sponsor this kind of debates, the way we now watch the Olympic Games and people compete, right? There was that, the Olympics started as, competition where powerful rich people go and watch, and in India there's an added element too. There's also intellectual prowess, intellectual power being demonstrated in debate. So Shantideva is definitely his immediate kind of like, when people hear him, they understand, he's engaging in a certain form of debate. Well, now with one footnote, of course, here his opponents doesn't get to respond. Right? So we also need to see, like here, his opponent don't get to say, actually, the way you characterize our beliefs, you don't really understand, right? We don't get that. So that's one point. But a more important point I want to point out is, actually, this is one way to kind of understand Shantideva's approach that he's refuting. But I think there's another way to understand what Shantideva is doing. Rather than refuting, I think you can think of like, let's go back to historical Buddha. How the historical Buddha would answer questions when people came to ask him. So do you say that reality is like this or like that, like this or like that? Or when he overhears his students discussing amongst themselves Dharma topics, right? The way he would instruct is by something that is like this method, which is he will say, no, not like that. So then they will ask another question. So you mean like is it like this? And he will say, no, not like that, because if you say it is like that, then the consequence of thinking that it is like that would be as follows. And if it is as follows, then the undesirable result that comes is like this. Based on this kind of belief, this kind of understanding, it will lead to this kind of being in the world, acting in the world, and this will produce this kind of negative results. So no, it is not like this. So he would primarily, or one of the primary modes that he used to teach is by responding to questions, responding to clarifications of this sort. So in a way, you can see that Shantideva is also doing that.
Dr. Lai, I missed certain parts of your content. Can you repeat, starting from let's go back to historical Buddha?
Yes, yeah. Right. Antonio can go ahead and translate. I'll just quickly summarize. Yeah. The main point here is to say that Shantideva's approach could well be understood in the context of the debate tradition that has developed in India, where kings are sponsors of these debates between religions and even within one particular religion, all the different positions. Yes, definitely you can say that's what he's doing, right? But there is an older precedence, an older example of something that looks like this, but need not necessarily be about debate, which is the way that the Buddha answered questions, the way the Buddha guided disciples. So often somebody would say, so do you, is it that, things are this way? And Buddha said, no, not this way. Because if you think that things are this way, then the consequence of that would be this. And surely we don't want this. Therefore, it cannot be like this. Yeah. So he used a way of basically saying no. No, not like this. No, not like that. No, not like this. Because if it is like this, then it will lead to this. If it is like that, then it will lead to that. And so this approach, it was the approach that the Buddha used, and the Buddha certainly wasn't debating, in the sense of the debate tradition that gets developed, after the Buddha's time, as like an intellectual debate, right? The Buddha's way is directly meeting the needs of that person, rather in the abstract realm of philosophical debate. So we could also understand Shantideva in that way. Yeah. Now, what's interesting is that even though, I said, chapter 9 is like, Shantideva is like all over the place. Yeah. But nonetheless, there's some interesting kind of progression. For example, this is really an important one. And so we will try to look more closely when we arrive at those stanzas. Basically, the four foundations, what's known as the four foundations of mindfulness. Mindfulness of body, mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of mind, and mindfulness of dharma or phenomena. It's in this chapter. Very clearly. There is a whole section where there's no question that Shantideva is using those four foundations of mindfulness to lead us to understanding, lead us to the wisdom of emptiness by looking more closely at the status, the reality of body. What is the reality of body? What is the reality of feelings? What is the reality of mind, of minds, mental states? And what is the reality of phenomena? So if you want to take down this, stanza 78 to 87 is the body. Then 88 to 101 is feelings. Uh, 102 to 105. 102 to 105 is mind, minds. And then 106 is starting from 106 is the dharma, and there 106 goes to 100 and let me see, basically 106 on to 140, you could say. It's about dharma. There, that section, it gets messy again. Of course, we should also say, well, it's only getting messy for you without understanding. But with superior wisdom, nothing is messy. If you possess superior understanding, nothing is messy. So last time when we stopped was around verse 7, 8, around there. So if we look at stanza 7, it says, but that he might instruct the worldly, our protector spoke of things, that there are these things. But these in truth lack even momentariness. So this section is basically that yes, generally the Buddha would use expressions and would use words in such a way you could say he talks about the existence of things. But here Shantideva says, but when he talks about the existence of things, you cannot quote, a sutra or to quote these passages and say, see, the Buddha, actually believe in the real existence of things. He says, no, if the Buddha use words and expressions that seems to suggest that he believes in the real existence of things, he was only doing it simply to work with whoever he was talking to. So things, right? When we say things here, it need not be like limited to actual just physical objects. It could also be, for example, if somebody says, I feel so much suffering, then the Buddha will say, oh yes, your suffering is, this and that and so on and so forth. But, right, this suffering should not be thought of as like solid, as real. But instead, then the next thing he does is he will lead this person. And so he'll begin where this person is. This person very strongly is feeling the suffering. The Buddha doesn't say, there's no such thing as suffering. Just go home now, you'll be fine. So the Buddha says, yes, suffering. Then the next step the Buddha does is, can you see how temporary this feeling of suffering actually is? Like, could you zoom in, so to say? Could you lean in a little bit more to see what is the quality of this suffering? What is the quality of this thing that you feel so strongly to be there? Can you lean in more? Can you zoom in more? So when you lean in more and you zoom in more, then you will see that this thing or this feeling or this experience that you have, it's actually very momentary. What happens with the momentariness is we then string them all together and then we give it a solidity that actually was never there except for our, you could say, memory of the past and our hopes of the future. And we string this all together and we call it a thing. So furthermore, in this stanza 7, the first 3 lines, Shantideva says, in fact, even this notion of momentariness, when you look further into it, so it's almost like saying, if you use a more powerful microscope, not telescope, microscope. So as we invent more and more powerful microscopes, right? It used to be that we thought, like in the realm of physics, it used to be that we thought that the atom is the final, right? Final, smallest existing thing until they develop more powerful ways of looking. Then, oh, actually, an atom consists of all these parts. Then, now it's down to what? Quarks, right? Even more tiny. Then even more tiny. In the same way here. Now, we're not talking about a microscope. We're talking about the power of the mind. We can see that even momentariness don't exist. The moment doesn't exist by itself. A moment's existence is only possible because we have other moments to compare. But these other moments that we use to compare this moment, they are all, on this side is just a memory of a moment that passed. On this other side is just an anticipation of a next moment. So that even the present moment, its integrity is based on a memory of what has passed and a hope of what will turn up. So these three lines, is actually very packed with very important understandings that we should develop first. Very important wisdom that we should understand first. Wei Ting, we cannot hear you.
Hello, Dr. Lai.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Can you repeat? Begin with where the Buddha is, and then can you see more about this suffering? That section.
Simply there is saying this suffering, which you can call a thing, can you see that it's not actually one thing, that it consists of moments. Then from there, can you see that these moments are even not real because each of these moments cannot stand alone. Yeah, so that's the gist.
Thank you. Sorry.
Problem, your internet is unstable. It's Chinese New Year time and lots of internet use for some reason. So then the fourth line in stanza 7, Shantideva is raising a potential objection, which is, then some will say, wait, how can you say that this teaching on momentariness is a relative truth? Yeah, because, right, in some ways you could say the Buddha tell people they should look at this, whatever thing it is that they think exists, and see how this thing consists of only momentary existence, all these moments. So these moments must be the actual truth. When we say ultimate, it also means actual truth. The appearance, right? The relative truth is there is a thing. The actuality, the ultimate truth is no, there are only all these moments strung together. So how can you now call this point about momentariness relative? So here Shantideva continues on stanza 8. He says, no, there's no problem here, or there's no fault, he says, because momentariness is relative for those further along the path. Here he calls the yogis. For worldly beings, meaning those who are not so developed yet, yes, they can relate to this instruction about seeing the momentariness of the momentary reality of things as ultimate. Yes, they can see that as ultimate. Fine, for now. But when you progress further along the path, even this teaching, even this point about momentariness becomes a relative reality. Then immediately, in verse 9, stanza 9, two objections are further raised by Shantideva. Supposedly potential objections for those who cannot accept what he's saying, right? One, they might counter by saying, Yeah? So I'm reading from the translation. Through a Buddha who is but illusion, how does merit spring? So here now, you can say that the other side will say, okay, then you're even not accepting that these moments are real, leaves us with the conclusion that everything is an illusion. So that's the point that is not explicitly stated here, right? It is basically a hypothetical response from the other side. So if you don't even allow those moments to be real, all right, because you say they are now relative, then you leave us with only the conclusion that even Buddhas are illusory. So then the objection here is, and if Buddhas are illusory, then how can merit arise? And so this is, of course, based on the understanding that accumulating merit is really important, which might come as a surprise to a lot of us. In the West, the Western Buddhists, don't really appreciate this idea of merit. Yeah? But this, you can see how important it is. Immediately, the opponent says, wait, you are undermining this very important practice of generating merit, of creating merit. And the supreme object, so to say, for merit to be generated are actions done towards Buddhas. Serving Buddhas, making offerings to Buddhas, facilitating Buddhas, reaching more sentient beings, all of that. Yeah? Whatever we do towards a Buddha can generate the most amount of merit. But now, if based on what you're saying, even Buddhas are illusory, then all of this talk about merit has been undermined. How can you say that? Basically, that's what this hypothetical objection is talking about. The second objection raised, again, these objections raised is very interesting. Because I think these days, they are not really the objections that we might raise. Yeah? So it kind of shows like the distance in some ways between what mattered to Shantideva's audience and what matters to us. The second objection raised within that same stanza is, if beings are like illusions, and so first, the first objection raised is, if Buddhas are like illusions, then the second one is like, then not only are Buddhas illusions, based on what you are saying, and they're saying to Shantideva, that now you are saying Buddhas are illusion, sentient beings are illusion. So the problem of Buddhas being illusion is a problem of merit. We just talked about that. Now, the problem of sentient beings, right, being illusions, then he says, then you will now basically invalidate this belief, this thing that the Buddha taught called rebirth. If sentient beings are illusory, what gets born after this life? So these are two like serious consequence that the opponent, the hypothetical opponent, is raising. So now there are no Buddhas and there are now no sentient beings. So what are we left to do? In other words, so in response to this, Shantideva says, so stanza 10, 11 is his answer, basically. But before I look at 10 and 11, what he's doing here is this. He says, you have misunderstood what illusory means. In other words, you have over applied the consequence of illusory. So what he's saying is, yes, in fact, even momentary existence is only true if you have a previous moment and a next moment, right? In other words, when we say present, like these days, we like to say, stay in the present, stay in the present. Yes, pretty good, stay in the present. Don't worry about the past, or don't get bogged down by what you did or did not do in the past, and don't have, all these hopes and fears about the future, stay in the present. Be here now, right? Things like this. But actually, Shantideva is saying, even this now, it's not, it cannot really stand on its own. This now is also dependent on, at least for the one having this experience, having the capacity to remember a previous moment and having the capacity to speculate about the next moment. So, in other words then, Shantideva's position is, this is like an illusion. This is like an illusion, meaning it has the qualities of an illusion. And what are the qualities of an illusion? An illusion meaning has the quality of, there is appearance, there is the appearance of things going on, but underneath this appearance, there isn't some hidden substance. There isn't some hidden object or thing. So everything exists only on the appearance level, and therefore it's illusory. Right? So this is Shantideva's point, that it is illusory. But what his opponents are hearing is, illusory means no consequence. What he will say in 10 and 11 is, no. When I say illusory, I don't rule out consequence. There are consequences. Consequence still operates. And so that's what he will try to clarify, starting from stanza 10.
Dr. Lai, I miss a certain point. You say, underneath this appearance, there's no hidden object. Everything exists only at the
Appearance level. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Judy?
It's the argument that someone is making is it that they are disregarding the relative piece of this when in fact things are both relative and ultimate? Because they're relative in the sense that something is happening, but ultimate in the sense that things are relative to moments before and moments and in anticipation.
What do you mean? I don't. Can you rephrase?
If you say everything is illusion, then you're disregarding the relative aspect of things. I mean, things are relative, and they're both relative and ultimate, are they not?
Well, here let's stay with this hypothetical objection. You might be more advanced than what's going on here.
I doubt it.
Because we learn a lot of things, you know. Let's stay with what his hypothetical objection here is. Yeah. So the hypothetical objection here is when you even don't let us stand on this teaching on the moments being real, then you have undermined notions of merit and notions of rebirth, which are so central to our tradition. So that's the objection being raised here.
Okay. I mean, I think I see that.
Mm-hmm. Let's stay with that first. Then let's see where he goes. Okay. Let's stay with that first. Yeah, I know where your question is. Your question is because you and many of us have learned more. So then we think, oh well, the answer is this. But let's stay with this first. Yeah. Yeah, so here I think our take-home lesson would be even like in the way that this objection is raised, yeah, it signals to us merit and rebirth are central to this tradition. It might come as a surprise to some of us. You're like, what? Well, whether you accept it or not, it's up to you. No one's forcing you to accept this, okay? But we have to work with the terms of the tradition. So here it's very interesting to me. The first objection raised, or the hypothetical objection that Shantideva presents here. So it tells us something. It tells us like Shantideva is is opening up the possibility of being accused of completely destroying the Buddhist tradition by consequence of what he's claiming, what he's refuting with the momentary status of things. And so this is a very serious charge, that you are denying even Buddhas producing merit, and you are denying that sentient beings have rebirth. So the bigger implication here is you have basically undone the need to attain Buddhahood, and you have completely undone the problem of rebirth. Remember, rebirth here, right? It's not like our New Age idea, oh, you get another life to improve, to evolve. Here, rebirth is continuous suffering. Coming back again and again, same nonsense, different life. So here, what is being raised here is like, you have completely undermined the very basis of our tradition by your illusory talk. Now, the essence of Shantideva's response, which is stanza verse 10, 11, 12, the essence of that, before we go into those stanzas, is basically his answer is, you have misunderstood what illusory means here. So here, again, some cultural, historical background. The primary reference when the word illusion, Maya, is used, the Sanskrit word is Maya, immediately the audience thinks of the things that a magician, so India has a strong tradition of like David Copperfield or whoever the famous people are these days. I'm stuck in the 80s. David Copperfield was like the famous one. Now there are other people, I'm sure. So India has a strong tradition of these street performers. They will conjure up an experience or hypnotize or whatever. And everyone there will kind of see all these like magical things. So when the word Maya, illusion, is used, that tends to be the immediate reference for people. Of course, Buddha, Shantideva, and others use that as a metaphor, as an analogy, and say, our lives have that Maya quality. Yeah, have that magical quality as these street magicians, these traveling entertainers, gave people an experience of magic, right? You have to keep in mind, right? There were no movies then. In a way, you could say, the magician in movies. So as in other contexts, I've said, like Lojong teachings, when it says, view everything as an illusion, I said, translation to modern times, you view everything like you're in a movie. Basically, that is people's reference, right? Now, here, Shantideva is saying, I am saying that everything is like an illusion. I'm not saying that everything is literally an illusion, like what street magicians have conjured up. Here he's saying that in fact, what a street magician has conjured up, and if you kill that, nothing is being killed except for that illusion. But if you kill a sentient being which has this illusory quality as opposed to literally illusion, right? If you kill a sentient being, that has karmic consequences. Again, right now, right, you don't need to accept this. You just need to understand Shantideva's point. Yeah. Later we can talk about, wait, does this make sense or not? First, try to understand this is the line Shantideva is trying to draw here. He says, you have over-applied my use of illusory. My use of the word, of the example, of the notion, of the metaphor of illusory. So stanza 11, I've kind of jumped ahead of this Shantideva's argument. Shantideva's leading us through this. So it's in stanza 11 he brings up this. He says, if you kill, so to say, something that was conjured up by a street magician or in a movie, right? There is no negative karma. Why? He says, because those beings have no minds. No minds. So then conversely, if you killed illusory like beings, like your neighbor, that has karmic consequences. Yeah, so both your neighbor who lives next to you and your evil character in your movie, they both have share certain similarity in terms of being illusory. But a crucial difference is your neighbor is a sentient being, whereas the character, the evil character in your movie, in your favorite movie, that you're cheering, to be killed, that doesn't have a sentient, it's not a sentient being. Yeah, so stanza 12 actually lays it out nicely. It says, there is no power in things like spells, so mirage-like minds do not occur through them. In other words, the spells here is talking about the street magician. What the street magician conjures up, as real as it might seem, they cannot produce a mind for these images. What's called here mirage-like minds. Right? So it says, but here my example of your neighbor, as for your neighbor, well, let's hope, he wasn't conjured up by some magician. and he or she does have a mirage-like mind, then lines 3 and 4 says, illusions spring from various causes. Thus, illusions are of different kinds. The illusions produced in movies, the illusions produced by the street magician, they lack minds. The beings produced by the street magician, the characters produced in the movie, they lack minds. They lack a reality beyond that. Whereas you and me also are illusory like, but there is a crucial difference, which is we have this thing called mind. So he says you cannot consider all illusions to be equally illusory. So now I think like with our more modern, our current issues, then the question is, is artificial intelligence, does it qualify as this mirage-like mind or not? I think this is the interesting question now, which is, a newer form of illusion, When does this illusion kind of like meet the requirement or the threshold of having mirage-like minds, the way Shantideva refers to? And so when does it become, when is there karmic implications, consequences if you kill an AI? Now, briefly, stanza 10, Remember, like 10, 11, 12 is his response to, are you undermining, right? the very basis of the Buddhist path, by saying, everything is illusory. Now we have seen, right? Shantideva says, hold on. When I say everything is illusory, not all illusions are equal. There is a very crucial line between the types of illusion that street magicians produce, or now for us, movie produce or AI produce, and the illusory that are you and me. Shantideva draws that line. He says, that's an important line. You should not think, just because, right, illusions are the result of different causes, and street magician illusions and movie illusions, right, are the result of causes and conditions coming together in a particular way, and that's produced. And likewise, you and me is the result of causes and conditions coming together temporarily and appearing, right? But he says there is a crucial line. That line is we possess sentience. Those things don't possess sentience. They cannot make moral choices. They don't operate with their own kind of autonomy. Whereas we do have that. So that's the crucial line. So not all illusions are the same. That's his answer to. So he says, in that way, I'm not undermining the problem of rebirth and the need to be free from this endless cycle of rebirth. And I'm not undermining the necessity or the virtues of achieving the Buddha state and becoming a great source of merit for all beings. He says, I'm not undermining that. Now, later, Shantideva will address another objection. And so he's probably looking at another group, another group in his audience that says, aha, hey, you talked about this mind. So this mind must be real. Right? This mirage-like mind, he says, if you say the real difference, right, between this type of illusion and that type of illusion, and the type of illusion that does produce karmic consequences, the type of illusion that needs to be freed from suffering, and if you say the crucial difference is this mind, then this mind must be real. And Shantideva will address this further down. in a way you can say what is going on is like Shantideva is dismantling, any possibility of us hanging on to something that we can say, that is permanent. That doesn't change. That is me. So any way that our confused mind, anything that our confused mind might latch on to say, this is this is real, this is me, he is going to cut it off. So he starts first with those who might use these momentary existence as a way to hang, so to say, their sense of I, their sense of self. He dismantles that. So now, of course, he introduced this mind. Then you can imagine in his audience, there's one group who will say, we're going to talk to him about this mind. Then he will go, as for this mind, here is also how this mind cannot serve as an excuse for you to say, that's me, that's I. And right now, some of us might say, what is all this leading to? You want the answer? It's there. I will give you the secret. Stanza 154. Shantideva says, the first two lines of stanza 154. He says, may all beings like myself discern and grasp that all things have the character of space. So this space-like samadhi, this stability of remaining spacious, space-like, is what all these refutations is leading us to. Space-like means, no limit, no specific place to get stuck in. You cannot identify and say, this is me, this is not me. Space-like. Space also, you cannot say, it exists. Right? It's not a thing. But you also cannot say it doesn't exist. Yeah, so today we will stop here. Stanza 12. 13 will be a different objection. 13 is an objection of a different type that Shantideva raises. So we'll save that for the next time. And let's see. So for sure, this Saturday, we will not meet. And next Tuesday, I will be traveling, so also not meeting. So the question now is whether we will meet on the 19th or not. It depends on how strong the internet signals are where I am on the 19th. So stay tuned. We will send information out whether we're meeting on the 19th. So 12 and 15, unfortunately, we will not be meeting. By the way, there is a book published called Practicing Wisdom. It's a compilation of commentaries that the Dalai Lama has given on Chapter 9. And based on combining two traditions of interpretation. One is the Nyingma Khenpo Kunpel's tradition of interpreting Chapter 9, and the other one is a Gelugpa interpretation of Chapter 9. So the Dalai Lama brings together these two and his reflections on these two different commentaries. So if you want to have a sense of how Chapter 9 is traditionally handled, that's a good book. It's called Practicing Wisdom. It's only in English as far as I can tell. Then, of course, Khenpo Kunpel's commentary, published in English as The Nectar of Manjushri's Speech, Chapter 9. There will also give you a sense of how Chapter 9 has been handled in the scholastic circles of Tibetan Buddhism. Apologies to everyone that there wasn't a break, particularly apologies to the translators that there was no break today and we just went straight on. The reason was I was thinking we would end at half an hour before the usual time, because also Wei Ting had to go to a friend's house to use the internet to get a better connection, and had requested that we end early so the friends won't have to stay up so late. It's quite late in Malaysia now. But apologies for all of that. I felt that since my understanding is still existing, I better finish my thought. And so we ended up more than 2 hours nonstop. Sorry.
Sorry, everyone.
장주 샘초림포제 마계바남계규제 개바념밤에바양 고내공두뼈월쇼. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Lai.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gracias.
Gracias, Dr. Lai.
Gracias.
Ciao for now. Thank you.
Gracias.